Well, welcome everybody to this amazing lightning panel of special guests today. But before we start, I'm going to introduce my co-host. Hello, Denise. Welcome.
Hello, Barry. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're really looking forward to today's conversation. So it should be really interesting.
Great. Thank you, Denise. Today we have a great panel from AutoVIN, and you'll hear much more about it. So before we go very farther, let's just have everybody say hi one by one, and we'll introduce you. First, we're going to start off with Jonathan. Welcome, Jonathan. You want to say hi? Get your voice and name up.
Hello.
On the screen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Watkins. I'm a servant leader with ADP, and I work with national accounts within our organization and help support our Scrum teams and getting our various releases out the door and handling all of those challenges of development and Scrum teams that they have.
Great, thank you. We have Kirsten and Jeremy on a shared camera. Hi, Kirsten and Jeremy.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Dibble. I'm a product manager at DataScan.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Irwin. I've spent about a decade in the quality assurance space, and within the last year, I've moved on to application administration.
Great, thank you. Mark, we'll go to you next.
Hey everyone, Mark Noyes. So I've been in the industry about 25 plus years in software development domain. The last couple of years, migrated actually to being a Scrum Master over here at Delta Airlines.
Great, thank you. Rick, welcome.
Hi, my name is Rick Fouts. I was in the quality assurance role at AutoVIN, and I'm in the quality assurance role now at LexisNexis.
Great to have you. And Harish.
Hi, my name is Harish Pai. I am a software technologist. My interests include integration and data.
Okay, great to have you. And also on the team was Sai. Hi, Sai, welcome.
Hello, and thank you so much for allowing this conversation to unfold to all the participants. Tremendous individuals with tremendous experiences that we'll dive into.
Yeah, and you were on the AutoVIN. What was your role when you were there on the project?
I had the great privilege of working with these great folks, including a few folks who are not with us, actually, Freddie, Julius, and Sherry, amongst others, at the time, and really supporting them to be their best. So they all have magic, and when they put their magic more so together, even more magic happens, which I'm sure we're going to get into.
That's a perfect lead-in for our panel today. So Denise and I will be kind of helping you guide this this panel. Let's just start off with the first question. We'll just kind of open it up, and that is, what learnings from the original AutoVIN experience remain with you today and have proved valuable? So let's just open it up, and anybody can speak, and we'll have a great panel.
I'd say the biggest things, if we talk about all this, is we talked about trust in others and ourselves, that we can do the right thing. I know it's uncomfortable to get started sometimes, just like this call here.
That's a good point. Hey, Jeremy, that listening to the audio again last night and going over some of these questions, time and time again, everything keeps coming back to a few things. It's trust and fear, right? And one resolving the other. And so, side jokes about us having been a magical team, but honestly, having coached and worked with no less than about 25 teams over the last few years, I see it's an incredibly valuable thing. So, in this case, you've got management trusted Sai, our coach. Our team opened up to Sai and trusted him, and suspended disbelief and fear and concern, and just basically gave ourselves over to the process of transformation. And so that trust amongst each other, I haven't seen it to the level that I've seen it over there in the AutoVIN experience and the transformation we have. I think he's right. It was magical.
You could say it was part of the circumstances we were going through. Some of that background, you know, they're closing the office, you know, we're all in that same situation together. So sharing, you know, kind of a dramatic experience. So we all coped it different ways, but I think we had to get comfortable with everything in front of us.
Good point. I forgot about that, but quarantine.
I know, we try to forget about some of that.
But, you know, it's also not to say that I would say everybody right off the bat was completely on board and ready. There were, like you said, Mark, there was definitely the fears that we had to work through, and varying degrees of success, right? Some people were much more eager to change and just go through the transformation, and other people resisted a bit longer.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure
go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, I'm sure that's very natural. Different cases to trust. Go ahead.
The circumstances were not easy when we started. There were a lot of uncertainty regarding the entire situation. Plus, the roadmap was not clear at that time. I remember I had just joined when we did the first, and at the end of the sprint zero, it was pretty much chaotic. We didn't know what we're doing. It seemed like it is going to take forever. We didn't know the clear direction, but again, it comes back to trust. We trusted each other, stuck to the fundamentals, got through the initial hiccups, and persevered that we were able to deliver at the end of the effort. And one more thing I would like to add is one lesson that I learned: never underestimate the power of fundamentals. Stick to the fundamentals as part of the agile journey, and that will take you through the hard times you are eventually going to face.
I guess I like to add, you know, when you look at that journey, that it's still a tough journey, even, you know, when we went through it at AutoVIN, as well as when you go on to your next assignments and looking at the teams and the change, and people still don't want to change. I've been in this Agile world now 9 years, and I still have challenges with teams of wanting to do it the old way and not wanting to communicate and respect one another, and just be open. Management, like when we were at AutoVIN, had its influence, and still today, you know, true Agile management still has that influence, and it's hard managing those influences, especially when it's around dates and expectations for delivering products.
I think one of the things that surprised me going through that was kind of how much of the process was psychological, for lack of a better word. There was a lot of it that, you know, dealing with different personalities and dealing with your own preconceived ideas of how things should be versus perhaps the way they're going, and just everything like that.
I was just remembering some of the trust issues as we were learning to trust each other and learning to embrace these new roles of cross-functional and those things. That I remember kind of feeling some lack of trust when someone would ask. I would ask a question and like, well, why do you even care? You're QA. Why is that an important thing for you to be involved in? And I just remember some of the issues were around that area of being able to embrace the new roles and the everyone's on the team together and more. We had our roles, but it was more holistic than what we had experienced before, and being able to ask those questions and without challenging people in their roles.
And when you look at the engineering team, that's one of the challenges. Even today, I see, we say we're an engineering team and you have a QA hat on, you have a development hat. but still today people want to keep their one hat. So when we're saying, hey, we need you to help do some testing because, you know, the QA is bogged down, even today, I'm still having that challenge with team members that, hey, everybody can do every particular role, supposedly.
Well, it's kind of
Master included.
goes back to that expression, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Yes.
Definitely the human condition. I mean, you're right. We struggle with the same things here. We leadership can say everyone's just a team member, but the reality is these people have gone through training and specialization, and they have specialized skills and talents, and there is absolutely a temptation to, you know, put them in a box or put themselves in a box. So absolutely trying to get people to rally around the sprint at the end of the sprint and get stories over the wire, asking developers to test, often a big challenge.
And one more thing I have learned is putting restrictions or more supervision on developers, or for that matter, any Scrum team member, is very often is counterproductive, because once the trust issues come in the picture, the team members will find a way to game the system. That's the natural human tendency, to give the management what they want to see. That is one thing I have learned, that have to instill that trust culture in the organization itself, so everything is transparent, and rather than forcing some restrictions or matrices or in whatever form, imposing them on the team is very often very counterproductive.
That's a good point. I think Sai brought that out in the audio from the last time, but getting teams to be non-fearful, right? So not being afraid to commit. Well, you know, we are having this situation here where management wants to see zero carryover, and as you know, that's not always possible. And to your point, Harish, teams will game the system, right? They will commit to less to make sure that there is zero carryover.
Right.
And so not exactly the intended outcome, but it does. I think Sai's point was, oops, the lights went out in my room. Sai's point was to not be afraid to commit, even with uncertainty, even with, you know, some uncertainty as to whether or not we would actually be able to finish something. And if we didn't, I guess, treat it as if it were a problem and create more fear and less trust and courage going forward.
And the only way, just to add to Mark's point, the only way to stretch oneself and realize one team's real capacity is to commit to the uncertain tasks or the stories and see how we land. And if the teams get imposed with the restrictions, they are more fearful to stretch themselves, and that eventually result into kind of a stalemate or impeding the progress of the team into realizing their full potential.
One thing I was going to say is, so after AutoVIN, Jeremy and I kind of went our separate ways, and then through company acquisitions and whatnot, we had not only found ourselves working for the same company again, but we were on the same team again. And we had started out, we were doing Scrum, but again, there was not really any restrictions so much, and so there was tons of carryover, and eventually we just kind of learned Scrum doesn't work for this team. And so we had to learn that being adaptable is more important than adhering to a particular process, if you will. You have to learn what works for your team and for the people on the team. Just because Scrum worked over here doesn't mean it's going to work over here. And having that buy-in from management is key as well. You have to be able to adapt.
Yeah, well, it's again about the uncertainty too. It's getting the initial stuff right in front of you, kind of defined enough just to commit, and then everything else is going to be vague down the road. And getting management on board with that idea that you don't have that complete roadmap, 12 months into the future, and it's going to be executed exactly as that's designed. We all know that's very difficult to do.
Especially when management comes in and changes it on you.
But if you focus on the right priorities and you deliver based off those, we all succeed as a team. And even though we didn't follow everything as strictly, we still had the same problems as if we followed Scrum, which is like overcommit.
I think personally that's such a key learning for people to understand that, you can read something in a book and you know what the fundamentals are, but it's not going to always work. And you have to be able to adapt, because each situation that you're going to be in, each company, people that are on the team are going to be different. And so you really have to have that mindset that you can change things and be comfortable with saying, hey, this didn't work, let's try something new, and be comfortable with that being comfortable with that being uncomfortable. I hear a lot about the kind of the human side, and it always, for me, was very interesting to see the human dynamics and the team dynamics, and building that trust. So can you just talk a little bit about that trust factor and how you all came to trust one another, and how that has taken you to where you are today, both from maybe professional as well as the personal side? Has that changed the way that you interact with people?
Good question. I think for me, I think that I kind of started on the project team a little bit later than several other people on the call. So for me, it was kind of learning to come in and was take a step back and observe first, because I have a tendency to want to just kind of go head on and just get going, and I might not even have a clear understanding of what's going on. So for me, it was very much a learn to observe, and then you can better decide how things are going to work or how things could work.
As part of that, I think the role definition through that process was extremely powerful. And it's something really simple, but really knowing what you should be focusing on and not focusing on everybody else's job at the same time adds a lot of clarity to it, and allows you to kind of delegate and get comfortable delegating people to handle other things. I know that was something I personally was challenged with, making sure everybody had their job done right and getting over involved, but saying, hey, the developer is an expert in developing, I need to go and trust them on that. And I can focus on making sure I'm really defining that problem so they can be successful at what they do. And just by doing that, it really helped out, but also just fitting into that role helped with that trust.
And it's really easy, I think, to fall into that. When you hear many companies, you'll hear people talking about, well, this group doesn't know what they're doing, or they just complain about some other group. And I've kind of, again, take a step back and realize that most likely they do know what they're doing and there's a reason for it. I just don't necessarily know the reason. So now I need to go have a conversation about why they're suggesting what they're suggesting or why they're doing what they're doing, so we can all come to an understanding about it. And so it's just get rid of that emotional, oh, they don't know what they're doing, knee-jerk reaction, and just be logical about it.
Well, it's kind of really changing your mindset of instead of jumping to a judgment, really just kind of exploring and having an open communication with people, right? And I think also you talk about roles and how critical the roles are. And I think also with that comes the accountability that each person has. They have a different sense of, I don't want to really let my teammates down now. It's very different than in a waterfall. And I think also it's important to communicate how your role affects my role and everyone else's role, and that integration of the roles are really important too. Was there any kind of a communication within the teams or outside of the teams when you would go to other teams outside of what you were doing that what that integration was, or how did you communicate with other people? Did that change at all?
Okay, let me start answering that part. But I want to just touch base on, just briefly talk about the previous topic, the human element of it. I came from a big software company. My previous experience to AutoVIN was with a very big company and in waterfall method. And what I started learning, and Sai was very key point to this learning. And I remember, even today, I remember the discussion I had with Sai, that this is the time when I started learning in this environment that software development is more and more of a human endeavor than technological endeavor. You get the right people in the right environment, and of course, the technical expertise, technical competency has to be there, and that will go a long way in ensuring the success of the team. And for me, it was a very key learning that how important human behavior or human insecurities, or whatever basically human nature plays in how the software is developed. That was one of my key learnings. And coming back to the communication, when we started this project, we were fortunate to have all the teams co-located within one roof in Atlanta. But as the project progressed, we had to move to a different location in Indianapolis, and that added a lot of complexity because we were used to working as a small teams in a very autonomous fashion, where we had to make major decisions pretty much about everything. And then once we started moving to Indianapolis, we were part of a corporate culture, and initially there were a lot of issues in terms of communication and integration with very agile and self-sustained team when it started working with process-oriented infrastructure teams or governance team. And we had to work our ways through those issues. And that took us some time and did impede initially, but eventually we did got through those obstacles.
When you look at communication, I know it's key that we communicate with so many different teams. I know currently I have to work with our infrastructure team closely and with other integrated teams. So, yes, we use tools to do that communication, having a phone call, not just sending an email. And when you're so distributed, sometimes people just want to send emails and think, oh, I sent you an email, didn't you see it? Well, I try to practice and tell the team, hey, follow up sometimes. If you're asking people to do work for you, follow up with a ping, or make sure they've gotten that communication clear. Yes, putting a user story into an inbox for a team to say, hey, we got some work for you. We put it in your inbox. They look at that inbox. So it was just key that we over communicated and used different methods to make sure we were communicating well. And just to touch on the personality, I'm a personal kind of guy as a Scrum Master, trying to get to know people. And relationships and building trust is about relationships and trying to know what people are and who they are, not just that person that's coming to work, but talking behind the scenes and going out. And we did that at AutoVIN, especially when we were, moved up to Carmel, and when we all came together, we went to dinner a lot together, and you got to build those relationships. And that's when you can call on one another when I need you to stay those extra hours because you built that trust in those relationships.
I think that's so key because at the end of the day, we're still humans. We have families and friends and parents and stuff, and we're we're not a robot. That's well said, Jonathan. I wanted to just bring Cy in for a minute. Cy, you were a lot of the glue that happened. I'm wondering if you have anything to share about this whole conversation.
Thank you so much, Barry, and thank you so much, folks, for sharing already so much. I'm going to change what you just said slightly, Barry, respectfully. The folks here were actually the glue. I was just present to it. Here, and I want to really kind of call this out, and I'd love to hear what you folks think. I'm going to try to summarize a little bit what you said, talk to exactly what Barry said, and would love to see what resonates, what doesn't, and shift what I'm about to share. You found yourself in particular circumstances, right? To call them extreme circumstances is probably an understatement. I think we kind of touched on that a little bit, but not elaborated. So extreme circumstances, very, very key. Definitely there was a fear element that was at play. Definitely there was a degree of struggle, and I love the way that you described it, Mark, in terms of suspending disbelief, right, is a very powerful statement. You're all very capable and competent individuals. I didn't show up, and I could not make things safe, if we say that language, right? I couldn't make them safe. I couldn't get rid of the fear. I couldn't eradicate it, nor did anyone ask me to eradicate it, because that's not realistic. So rather than shy away from the reality, fear, struggle, etc., all I did was just gently remind you of how much magic you have, quite honestly. You're all competent, right? And then help you respectfully discover the courage that you had within you, that in some capacity gets forgotten along the way, right? Through education and through indoctrination in organizations. But all I had to do was just show up. I didn't force a discipline, right? No one forced a discipline. You discover the right degree of discipline. Correct me if I'm wrong. To work together.
I think you're right. But, certainly you facilitated that greatly, and kudos again to the AutoVIN management for trusting you and allowing us to say, we might not use that term safe, but I think you did facilitate creating that safe environment, and management did as well by trusting you to allow us to go off, quarantine us, went through a couple of sprint zeros. No, everything wasn't smooth, but I think you were instrumental to that for sure. And you're right. I mean, we did suspend disbelief, I think, long enough for us to discover some of what you were trying to show us was within ourselves. And when we started to deliver, not only did we begin to trust ourselves as well as trusting the process, but both management and the customer began to trust us even more, as well as the process.
The piece I want to hone in on, Mark and team, and this is the thing that honestly I think a lot of people generally forget. The magic is in you. That's the key. I was just the gentle reminder that carried the message between leadership and management and you folks, because you were already doing brilliant things. But the reminder, I was the carrier of the reminder in one direction, and then likewise the carrier of the reminder that, hey, let this magnificent goose lay those golden eggs in the other direction. But the magic is in you. That's the piece I think people really forget as we get drawn into the day-to-day.
Indeed. I think, remembering the audio, which, again, I just re-listened to, but, I forget who it was that mentioned we were having stand-ups, but basically they were being run by management, and management was looking for their reports, and they were looking for progress and status and all of the likes, and as a result, the team was somewhat overshadowed, and I think that probably exacerbated them, us forgetting the magic. But yeah, putting that aside, getting us together, trusting us to come up with a plan, and then us seeing the results of that definitely reignited it.
I think that's a kind of a key point too, is we felt we had ownership of the process in some way. We had made decisions to help shape the things that we were going to do and how we were going to deliver them. It wasn't dictated to us. It wasn't, you will do this and then do that. It was, as a team, how can we best provide the information, the software, whatever it is that management and our customers need, and do it efficiently and be able to get things done.
And that's a very key point, Christian. And that is the difference I saw from when we were working in Atlanta versus when we were working in a corporate environment. And that put a lot of pressure on how we deliver the software. And we once we moved into a different location, we were part of a different culture, which are less of an agile and more of a management style culture. And we had to educate the rest of the organization about with agile, because we were pretty much the pioneers in the organization. And that took us some time, and the communication and the adjustment we both needed to do. The lead agile team versus the other teams that support us. And that took us, quite frankly, a few months to get through and get back to the rhythm we had when we were a self-sustained and self-directed team.
I'm going to jump off. I'm sorry, Mark. I was going to just say, I'm going to jump off. Definitely, folks, you know how much I love you all around, how much I respect you. Definitely continue the conversation and see where it goes. The one thing that I would say just before dropping off, when I first met each of you, I picked up on the magic. That was really the key thing. I picked up on the magic and then said, hey, let's just let it dance together. All the way from the visionary perspective that Jeremy, you brought to the table, and Kirsten, you brought to the table, to the technical savviness that Harish and Mark and others brought to the table in terms of architecture, and the focus on quality with Rick, and of course the wielding of orchestration through Jonathan. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll let you folks continue the conversation. But by all means, I look forward to another perhaps 7+ years and we reunite again. Love you all, folks.
Good to see you again.
See you, sir.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
See you.
Thanks.
Likewise.
You know, the question that I think is on the table that I'll actually just say, and then it will maybe move it forward a little bit, is, you know, when you look back, what learnings, you know, after the fact, since the AutoVIN experience, the one you had all together, do you wish you knew back then that you know now? Maybe that will move it forward a little bit. We're sort of in some of that conversation right now, but I just wanted to name that.
Wish I knew back then.
I've been thinking.
I can see the wheels moving behind you there, Jonathan. Go ahead, Kirsten.
I was gonna say, I have been thinking about this one, and what do I know now that I wish I knew then? I think it still goes back to, well, some of it is I kind of wish I had the confidence in myself that Sai has in me. But I think it is I wish that I had then the patience that I do now, or at least I hope I have now. You know, back to take a step back and listen. I think in many ways I was a little too quick to just jump right in before. So it was hard for me to learn, and I'm still learning, but hopefully I've gotten better about it. I won't look to you.
Yeah, so I kind of look back and say, what could I have done better? And that's another way of thinking about it. And I think it's working with other people. You know, we learned a lot through those interactions with each other, and I think that's where I learned most, and how to get people comfortable with some of that unknown, and how we introduce some of that change. You know, especially when we're talking about product direction or vision. You know, some of those can be pretty dramatic and hard to consume when, you know, let's say a developer is in that other extreme end where they're trying to execute at the those extreme details. So that can be pretty disruptive, and there's better ways to make those introductions. I know I had a few faults there in the past where maybe I shot too far ahead.
I really enjoyed the experience. I found that it was a period of a lot of personal growth, learning to not only trust in the team, but to trust in myself. And that's something that, that certainly would have appreciated to have that trust back then. Kind of, it wasn't possible, but to know that this thing was actually going to work out for us, and we would be able to do well with it. To know that earlier would have been helpful.
What I look back now, what I wish I would have known is, this is not a silver bullet. It takes time and effort to go through a transformation, and people are going to be challenged with that. And I needed to, as Scrum Master and / coach, help work and talk to some of those team members a little more. We did go to SI a lot, and I still, as a coach, go back. My coach taught me back in the day, this is how we should do it, and I still use those terms with some of my team members. But that's one of the challenges I see. Even today, I'm going, woo, this still isn't easy. I thought it was going to get easier, but it hasn't gotten easier. Is it good? Is it a great process? Yes, but it's not necessarily the easiest thing to implement.
Well, and I think Jeremy and I were talking earlier before this meeting, and the phrase that came up was conflict is okay. You're going to have disagreements. Not everybody, it's not going to be all rainbows and unicorns. So there will be disagreements, but again, to borrow from Sai, you do it respectfully, right? You pick your battles, if you will, but you have to understand that it's going to happen and be okay with that.
You're not growing unless you're uncomfortable.
They call it growing pains for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to add 2 things. You guys have already covered a lot of it. What I learned from this journey, again, it's not simple. It's never easy, but it's also, every journey is a unique journey. Every team has to go through its own journey to get to where they want to, and never underestimate the power of this transformation, because some things that are, when you start the journey, that are unclear, are challenging, and keep chugging through those challenges, and you will get to, you never know what opportunities the transformation journey opens you and the team up to. In this case, we started with a very small endeavor, which was like probably 1 year, which was time bound by 1 year because of the circumstances we were in. And it was a challenging journey, but that journey positioned the company and the team. Today, the same platform is being positioned for the next generation of the application development. And that discussion is happening. And so you never know where the journey takes you, and be open to it and go through it and enjoy it.
I think that's important. It is very hard. It's not easy, but I think if you can find the fun in it, because it can be fun, as well as really hard work, I think is critical. And I think you're right. Some people think that it's going to be this magic silver bullet and all the problems are going to go away because we're going through this transformation or implementing Agile. And that's just, like, there's no silver bullet in life, period. So interesting that came up. Barry, do you have any other questions, or does anyone?
Something else hit me is around management, and what I've learned then is that management gets involved, and because of that, takes away sometimes team members wanting to voice their opinions. I find in my organization, managers are still integral. They may not say they're technically on the Scrum team, but they are running the Scrum teams, and they report into those, and those Scrum teams report into those managers, and they give them direction. and it takes away the team. It stifles the team sometimes because they don't want to say things because of that manager, and they're people managers. And we always say, oh, the people manager is not supposed to be part of the team, but reality says they're going to be there, and they haven't changed. Those managers haven't changed their way they see things. They still have to have the responsibility for the product or have the responsibility for these teams, and they need to know everything that's going in, and they're going to give their input.
That's really good, Jonathan. I think the way I see it is that, you know, there's a built-in authority factor, right? And the people manager has the authority to often hire and fire, and so then, you know, kind of like the parental feeling of the boss or the authority is there. So sometimes the normalcy of the person or the team says, ooh, the boss is here, the authority figure is here. I think I'll shrink and not be who I really am, is what I'm hearing. Yeah. I want to ask a question of Harish, if I may. You're still at AutoVIN, is that accurate?
That's correct.
Yeah, this is just to get maybe some perspective. So what is different today? I mean, this is true for everybody, but I want to get from you, because you're still there. What's different today at AutoVIN, since you're still there? It's a different world probably, but as a result of the transformation, if you could give us a little insight to that, and maybe we can knock that around a little.
AutoVIN has come a long way from where we were 8 or 9 years ago when we started the journey. And as I alluded a little bit earlier, that the journey we started 8 years ago has changed the company dramatically. The journey was not at all easy. We don't even recognize what we were 8 years ago, to be frank. And that journey, what we started, became a catalyst in developing more and more applications on the platform that we developed. And today, that platform is going to be the key or main platform that will be used to develop the next phase of applications going forward. The auto industry is changing pretty rapidly, and there are a lot of changes that are coming in the future. And the platform we all developed here is going to be used for that future development also.
Have they implemented Scrum in all the teams within
the entire, not only AutoVIN, now entire umbrella of companies which the AutoVIN is part of is using agile methodologies. I mean, mainly we are in safe now. Including the infrastructure team, every team uses safe method in agile.
So, Harish, when you say that it's changed the company, that how has it changed the company, and have other business segments adapted an agile methodology or approach, or at least part of that? Like, has HR transformed? Has marketing transformed? Or are you seeing it really just within the technology space?
What I know is that technology, all the business units have transformed into agile, have gone through agile transformations. I don't know about HR or marketing. I'm not aware of those business unit or functional units. But I know all business technology units. When I say technology units, all the infrastructure, networking, or project management, everyone is following agile. And that's a fundamental transformation for a company which was completely in a waterfall mode and which was used to these 3 or 6 months releases or even a year releases. Now, from that journey to releasing into every 2 weeks is a fundamental transformation that actually is needed to face the challenges that are being that are coming up in the auto industry.
Got it. I have a question just in terms of, we were talking about conflict management, and can you talk a little bit about some of the ceremonies? Like, did you do retrospectives, and how were they done in a way that really kind of got to some of those conflicts, or did it bring out those conflicts?
And this question's for anybody, right? From the panel?
Anyone. I'm just curious in terms of the process and at AutoVIN, and when you were adapting a true agile methodology and going through all of the different ceremonies and the retrospective, how maybe you were doing retrospectives before, so I guess that's a question that we would need to understand. But did you find those retrospectives, when they were done well, really helped and to raise awareness and to raise that underlying conflict and address it in a healthy way?
I think personally, we did do, you know, we did stand-ups, we did retrospectives, we did sprint planning. I think it took a few sprints to get used to some of them. I think maybe at first weren't quite sure what we were doing, maybe didn't take it quite as seriously as is needed until, you know, we kind of got used to it. We did with our stand-ups, we ended up having to kind of change the way that they're, I guess, more traditionally done. We started out with, you know, everybody, I think it was everybody just, you know, what did you do? You know, the 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? Do you have any impediments? And we changed it to, instead of, we had a wall that was covered in Post-it notes. Mm-hmm. And that was separated by story. And we would talk about stories. So it was, instead of just, what did you do today? What are you know, going around the room, it was, all right, let's talk about this story. Now let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this one. And that was our stand-up. And we found, for us, that worked a lot better, because it was more about the work needing to be done than just, when we would go by individual, we would get kind of caught up in, oh, I found this error yesterday, and then we'd start going off on a tangent about that. And so it was a lot easier to stay focused if we talked about the stories.
We definitely did the retrospectives. I think part of our big challenge with that was, it was quite a bit after the fact, and we would have a hard time remembering everything that we wanted to change or improve. I can't remember if we ever got to where we were having more frequently, so at least we could remember all the issues. But no, it was valuable when we got, but I don't think we covered everything.
No, and you know, again, I think for some of the ceremonies, it definitely took, you know, like, be adaptable, right? If it wasn't working, don't wait until a retrospective to have the conversation about what's not working. Have the conversation as it's not working.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, looking at a good way, did we track everything in a spreadsheet saying these are all the action items and we worked those action items? No, we didn't necessarily do the best job there. We did, you know, come up with some ideas doing those retrospectives and made changes, but to be able to go back and say, oh, where's the list of all of our action items? I can't recall where that is now.
I do recall some of the retrospectives, and it was very challenging to bring up, well, here's a place where we failed. And fortunately, with the support that we had, we were able to bring this up and then discuss how can we overcome that? And then, as Kirsten said, to then move forward to not have to even do that in the retrospective, but do that as it's happening. But we had the support to bring those questions up that were challenging questions, and then as a team organize and how can we resolve this issue that we're having. And it was very powerful and affirming to go through that process.
Yeah, I think once again, probably there was a lot of deference and a lot of sitting back and waiting and in our initial retrospectives, you know, Sai helped us break through some of those barriers. Like Rick was saying, it's uncomfortable, but helping us to not make it personal and dive into some of the deep and be candid. Like we said earlier, be respectful, and just just as we learn the process and learn to trust the process, learning how to have respectful, candid conversations in regards to some difficult conversations I think that was really invaluable for us. Jonathan, I do recall, surprisingly vague recollection, that we did put a large 3M sticky up on the wall with our retro action items.
Yes, okay, that's where it was.
Yeah, we did.
How well we did in following up on them, I'm not sure, but we did track them to a certain degree.
So as we begin to come to the top of the hour here, we got about 8 minutes or so. Kind of a pre-closing question might be, are there any other insights or guidance for any of you having gone through this transformation or similar experience that you want to share? Maybe some takeaways from here that our listeners will be able to know about. Feel free.
I think it kind of reminds me of some of the earlier retrospectives that part of it is about us interacting with each other and understanding not only like there's, first of all, the roles, which, you know, as part of developing the software, but there's roles as far as representing different perspectives. I know we had some optimists, some other people that maybe weren't so optimistic, and understanding that between all of us, we kind of represent a balance, but respecting that other person's perspective on that situation. And together, we'll come to an agreement. It may take a little longer, maybe a little rough. I know that's probably some of those early meetings is trying to understand, where's this person coming from? I just can't align with them at all. But that's definitely key to the process is understanding how someone else is looking at that problem or what you're dealing with, and kind of wrapping your head around that. But taking the time to do so and respecting them and their perspective.
I think the process gave us the ability to kind of see those challenges and where other situations we might have just kind of worked around the fact that so-and-so is negative and we just don't talk to them that much, but instead to face those challenges and come to understandings in ways that allowed us to move forward as a team instead of being handicapped by not having had that conversation. The process really helped me to recognize when and have the brave or the strength to have those challenging conversations. And I even find today that that's helpful to instead of ignoring something, address it. And this was a tool, a method through respect to be able to open those conversations up and move forward.
One thing that I found over the time, you know, it's great being co-located when you get distributive, even in the States, but when you go distributive international, that you have to respect the different cultures and the different norms that come with diversity. I've had challenges with teams and saying, hey, why won't you speak up? But that norm is not to speak up. I'm trying to say, hey, everybody has a voice on this team, but just because of cultural norms, it's been challenging. How to get people to overcome those norms is something that I'm still struggling with and trying to come up with techniques to help my teams.
Interesting.
I wonder if part of our process wasn't the fact that if we didn't have those conversations quick and early, we weren't going to succeed, and we knew it, and there was that pressure and that driving force to resolve as quickly as we could these concerns.
Well, and I think we also learned that if you don't speak up, you're just going to have to learn to live with it. And if you didn't want to live with it, speak up.
And people do, and this goes back to the way we started this conversation. People do speak up if they trust the team, and they'll be more open. And I think that's my one key learning is trust your team and have the management trust the team, and that will make the journeys a lot better.
Very true. And, you know, I think it really is touching on a lot of the same points. So absolutely, you know, trust from management, trust within the team, trusting yourselves. But, you know, even more so today, now that we're 8-10 years down the road, Agile, many shapes and forms, is much more common. And so you get new team members coming on. They all have their own perspective of what it means to work on an Agile team and various Agile tools and processes. So I think it's very similar to what we had here. And if you get people to let go of old patterns and processes, to trust themselves, and like you guys said earlier, every transformation journey is different. So own your transformation, be open and honest with each other, challenge each other, you know, respectfully, but, you know, make it your own.
I would just like to say that I really admire each and every one of you, knowing that what lies at the end of your journey, that you still went forward and went into going through the transformation and adapting Agile, knowing how difficult it would be, and knowing that at the end of the journey you were not going to be with that same company. And I just think that it speaks volumes to each and every one of your own characters, quite honestly. So I just wanted to add that.
The journey definitely probably helped every one of these people's careers. So
I understand, and it's a learning experience, but, you know, quite honestly, Jonathan, a lot of people would say, I'm not going to go through that. Like, I'm just not going to put myself through that, knowing how difficult it's going to be, knowing that at the end of it, I'm not going to be with that company. So I agree, and I would hope that people would always take and look at something as a learning experience, whether good or bad. You know, what you don't want to do or what you do want to do. But not everyone has that mindset. And so I think kudos to all of you for doing that.
Yeah, it definitely put us in a different place, knowing that there was an end, what our futures lie, and what we had to use that time wisely. And so we had to go inward and say, what do I need to get out of this? Because I need something to move with me somewhere else.
I'm curious, thank you. I'm curious as we wrap this up, if maybe you have a one-word takeaway, which will really be bottom line, that you would just say this one word represents your whole experience. That's real bottom line. You guys up for that?
Sure.
Okay, Jonathan, let's call on you first.
Challenging.
Challenging. Thank you. Rick?
I would go with communication.
Communication. Thank you. Harish?
I'm going back to trust.
Trust.
Yeah, I have to go Harish there.
All right, I'll go with another word.
You can use the same word if you want. Your choice, Kirsten.
I'm gonna go with a different one. I'm gonna go with educational.
Educational. Jeremy?
I'm going with trust.
Trust. And Mark?
I think as the root, from my perspective, for what is resulting in that is empowerment.
Empowerment.
Size empowering us, the team, the management empowering us is what results in the trust.
Okay. Great conversation today. Anything you want to add, Denise, before we wrap her up?
No, I think that this was really great. I'm so happy that you were willing to share all of your own personal journeys and insights. I think that our audience, there was some great gems and takeaways in our conversation today. So thank you again, everyone.
Yeah. So for our AutoVIN panelists, Mark, Jeremy, Kirsten, Jonathan, Harish, Rick, and Sai, thank you all for sharing this hour with us on the recording. We'll have it up on the website soon. Thank you to my co-host Denise for dancing with me today.
Thank you, Barry. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. We'll see everybody on a future webinar or panel. And this completes today's panel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Lee.